Shinichiro Watanabe made possibly the most dope show of all time in Cowboy Bebop. Despite failed attempts to tarnish his creation, Bebop still stands as a masterpiece of the medium, perfectly combining music with animation. If you've seen Bebop before, you know exactly how potent a good soundtrack combined with the right animation can be. After the success of Bebop, Watanabe decided to have another go at perfection, and somehow he did it again.
Hi everyone, welcome to Jump Report. I'm your host Noah.
And I'm Taylor.
And today we present to you Samurai Champloo.
Yeah, sharp like an edge of a samurai sword, the mental blade cut through flesh and bone. No, my mind's at peace, the word out of order, listen then the heat that gets colder. Oh yes, I have to find my path, no less walk on earth, water and fire. The elements compose a man.
If you guys haven't seen Samurai Champloo yet, there is going to be some spoilers ahead.
Just like with Cowboy Bebop, part of the appeal of Samurai Champloo is the brilliant soundtrack that is incorporated into the anime. However, Watanabe made a huge departure from jazz in favor of a blend of hip-hop and traditional Japanese music. While on paper, this concept of blending two entirely separate genres might be a good idea, it can actually be very difficult to pull off in practice. Champloo does it perfectly, and if I had to choose between Cowboy Bebop's soundtrack and Champloo's, it would be Champloo's without a doubt. For Champloo, Watanabe brought in none other than the late Nujabes and Fat John to help produce and rap for the show's soundtrack. Nujabes and his production being the main highlight for me and many other fans, since he is often credited for the creation of the Lofi hip-hop genre. While you see jazz being incorporated into many other anime, I truly feel that Champloo's soundtrack is entirely unique and idiosyncratic, with the music perfectly complementing the show. The word Champloo itself means stirred together or mixed up. In the context of the show's title, one could derive the title to be Samurai Remix, which is a perfect way to summarize both the anime and soundtrack. The anime is a mix of traditional Japanese culture and hip-hop. Hip-hop in itself utilizes a lot of sampling to create an entirely new sound or song. Hip-hop was a perfect choice for the type of show that Samurai Champloo is trying to be, a remix. Before I had even seen Samurai Champloo, I was already a big fan of Nujabes, and have even heard many of the tracks that appear in the anime, from the melancholic yet beautiful Counting Stars, to the iconic Aurorian dance. Part of the appeal of Champloo for me was hearing a lot of the tracks come to life in the show and seeing what scenes utilize the work of Nujabes. Whether you go in blind or have already heard Nujabes' music, I promise it will be a treat to hear when watching the show regardless.
Another aspect of Champloo that stands out is the action scenes. Most anime fight scenes are structured all the same. They drag out fights for half an episode using flashbacks and internal dialogue with cuts to the audience's reactions. This formula works for creating tension and allows for dialogue to further the narrative, with usually some above-average animation thrown in. Champloo does things differently though, and for the better. Fights in Champloo aren't plagued by dialogue or cutaways, rather they're quick and dirty. Fights break out often due to the trio's knack for trouble, but this doesn't put a hold on the story. Fights never drag because they're always on the move. Changes in setting, characters, stakes, and other aspects during the fight keep it feeling fresh. Most importantly, the creative choreography used throughout the show is a masterclass in animating fight scenes. If you were a fan of the taijutsu fights in Naruto, you'd love the combat of Samurai Champloo.
To draw another similarity to Bebop, Champloo also follows a loose story structure. The episodes are mostly non-continuous, focusing on new characters and events that will only exist in that episode. The This type of story structure allows for a wide variety of themes to be explored, as well as settings to work with. By changing the setting, side characters, and theme, you can see original and creative episodes that don't detract from the main story, but rather add to it. This is the reason why it's hard to spoil Samurai Champloo. Every episode is vastly different from the last.
Champloo doesn't stray far from the norm when it comes to the main characters. We see the MC trio of 2 boys and 1 girl in shows like Naruto and more recently in Jujutsu Kaisen, along with several others. What makes Champloo stand out is all the characters are well written. The characters clearly had a lot of thought put into them, and while the time spent with the characters was short and their backstories often lacked detail, you end up feeling close to the characters like you would feel close to a friend.
In Champloo, Jin plays the role of a stoic badass, a master of the blade with great renown to his name. His stoic nature befits a master samurai, and it makes it even more impactful when the facade breaks and we see his true emotions. Mugen is akin to a rabid dog when describing his fighting style, as it is a combination of breakdancing and swordsmanship. Fu is normal by comparison, but in the show, she's often pretty brave and is the glue that holds the group together. The trio are all searching for something different. After all of the events of the show, the characters eventually realize what they were searching for was with them all along. Mugen wanted a family, Jin wanted a reason to fight for others, and Fu needed to resolve her father's abandonment. As you learn more about the characters, the more real they become.
When people are talking about the aesthetic of something, they usually mean that it's beautiful or visually appealing. While Samurai Champloo is indeed both of those, there's another factor I consider. That factor is the feeling it gives and how it's shaped by the aesthetic. When I say feeling, I'm referring to a non-tangible effect some shows seem to have on their audiences. It draws you in, it breathes life into the characters, and for the duration of that episode, their world is real to you. Watanabe first showed me this feeling through Bebop and continued it into Samurai Champloo. Champloo being set in Edo period Japan is the perfect setting for Watanabe's style, as he likes to subvert expectations of the time period. In Bebop, we see how he masterfully blended the futuristic setting with traditional Western movie tropes, allowing for both the past and the present to exist simultaneously. We see this same blending again in Champloo as Watanabe combines traditional Japan with modern hip-hop culture. Something about seeing sword fights and rap battles in the same show just hits different. Of course, strictly speaking about the visuals, the show's use of color and landscapes are enough to put it above most in terms of beauty, but nothing compares to the unique feeling the aesthetic gives you when everything feels just right.
Goddamn! My favorite episode of Samurai Champloo has to be episode 11. In this Jin-focused episode, we get to see a very human side of Jin as he meets and falls for a woman who is forced to work at a brothel to help pay off her husband's gambling debts. This is one of the first times in Samurai Champloo where we get to see a very vulnerable side to Jin, who is usually a very controlled and disciplined character. Throughout the episode, I was questioning to myself whether or not Jin would actually go through with leaving his friends and what the fate of him and the woman would be. I don't want to spoil anything specifically, since I encourage everyone to experience the emotion of that episode for themselves. I will say that the aforementioned Nujabe song, Counting Stars, is incorporated beautifully here. Honestly, after watching this episode, all I can visualize is the melancholic ending scene when listening to it on my own.
My favorite episode is by far episode 9. The story starts decades in the future as a side character who has grown old recalls the events when he met the main trio. The trio attempts to sneak past a border checkpoint, but are caught and set to be executed. Because of some complications, the official in charge tasks Mugen to deliver an item to some warrior priests in the mountains. He's given until sundown to deliver the item in return, or else his companions would be executed. Mugen, of course, is captured by the warrior priests instead, and learns of their evil plan, to have everybody smoke hemp in the pursuit of world peace. Yeah, you heard that right. We have hippie warrior priests trying to force the cannabis agenda onto the general populace. Mugen must escape them and return before sundown, but during his attempted escape, he accidentally sets the hemp fields on fire, resulting in Mugen and the warrior priests getting too high to continue fighting. The smoke flows through the town and eventually to the border checkpoint, where instead of an execution, a massive party is thrown instead, and the trio walk away the next morning perfectly fine. This episode is full of small gags and comedy, along with some creative animation and fun fight scenes. The way the show chose to resolve this weighty conflict was hilarious to me, and is a great representation of what makes Champloo stand above most shows.
Samurai Champloo proves that lightning can be caught in a bottle twice. With its compelling story, iconic soundtrack, and characters, Champloo provides an experience that rivals Watanabe's previous masterpiece and in some ways surpasses it. In the conversation of what is the greatest anime of all time, I personally think Bebop is a better fit. However, I cannot disagree with anyone who might think Champloo is, and can entirely understand their reasons for thinking so. In the future, we plan on looking at Space Dandy, another Watanabe work that is in the same conversation.
Let us know what you guys think about Samurai Champloo down in the comments below. Leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and make sure to check out our other videos for more reactions, analysis, recommendations, and reviews. See you guys in the next video. Peace. Alright, scratch that.